films of Walt Disney and the films of Pixar, you see a similar quality of always striving for some new technological innovation. Who cares about the company? What about us? And that's certainly the case in Monsters Incorporated.
That's right, baby.
In every story that we create at Pixar, there is something in the story that's something we don't know how to do.
I love working with that big guy.
We don't want to just repeat ourselves. We want to, push the envelope technically.
So whatever they say, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that. I'm thinking now, I've got used to the fact that they're probably going to figure it out in a couple of days.
Do you hear that? It's the winds of change.
This film's always been a film about a big hairy monster.
You're the boss, you're the boss, you're the big hairy boss.
And that, of course, got everybody very worried initially because fur, in general, is one of the hardest things to do in computer graphics.
Sullivan is in about 600 shots in the film. On a big furry, 8-foot-tall monster, you need to have about 3 million hairs.
Is that a joke? Tell me you're joking.
Can you imagine if, you had an animator who had to go through and animate every single hair? That would just drive them insane, basically. All our animators would quit.
That's it. I'm out of ideas. We're closed.
We had to figure out a way for that hair to move automatically. And that's the genius.
We engineered a whole dynamic system that basically let the animators not have to worry about that at all.
Our animators just move the character, and then computationally, all the fur figures out how to move itself. And that allows us to achieve a level of visual complexity that we never could without this dynamic, intelligent fur.
So he'll do this movement, and the fur is aware of gravity and some sort of wind resistance, and it responds appropriately.
And the same thing is true of cloth.
When I move my arm, this is very sophisticated bending and folding of that cloth.
It's just completely random, and it moves, all over the place.
So we came up with a dynamic system just like the hair that deals with the cloth.
This is perfect.
The animators could just have Boo run around and be cute, and after the animation was done, we would apply this automated animation to her t-shirt that would figure out how everything should move and fold.
The software that we're using is simulating the basic laws of physics, such as the bending and the stretching and the shear and that kind of thing.
The nightmare is over.
The dynamics puts us into a whole different realm where you're not asking an animator to create motion, but now we're asking a computer program to create motion.
And so the cloth moves by itself, the fur moves by itself. And this is where we put a tremendous amount of energy.
What a plan. Simple, yet insane.
The door vault is pretty amazing at Monsters, Inc. It's got something like 23 million closet doors stored in it.
Oh, boy.
We literally had to figure out how to draw millions of doors. And this seemed like a total impossibility. Nobody thought we could really do that.
Your stunned silence is very reassuring.
The way we do it is sort of a trick. We draw what you could think of as a little cardboard of paper, and the renderer thinks about it as a little piece of paper, and so it's very efficient to render, but it tends to look from medium to far distances just like a real door.
I still don't understand.
Basically what I did was create a sort of program that figured out exactly how the doors should move.
Oh.
If the door is going around a curve, then it needs to swing out to approximate that centrifugal force. There's this really nice organic quality to it. It looks almost like a traffic jam in San Francisco.
We're working on scenes right now that involve Sullivan in the Himalayas. You have to be extremely foggy, so to give this feeling of coldness, very hostile environment.
No!
Everybody was a little afraid of the complexity and the technological challenges that we had to actually make this environment to look believable.
They're like, no, it can't be done.
Yeah. In particular, we have two specific sequences that happen to be in completely a snow environment under a snowstorm.
Yeah, but then you challenge her and say, come on, you can do it. You can do it. You're awesome.
You're still not listening!
We actually do model those snowflakes individually that fall. And we have to take into account things like the wind, because the wind also would affect the way Sullivan's fur moved. Sullivan is launched from a toboggan. He's been outside in a snowy blizzard for a long time, so what we would expect is that he would accumulate snow in his fur as it's falling from the sky. And we attached individual snowflakes to the hairs. We would determine how likely it was that there would be a snowflake there based on how long he'd been outside, what direction the wind was blowing, and how he hit the snow when he landed off the sled.
We really sweat the details.
Well, James, that was an impressive display. Oh, just doing my job, Mr. Waternoose. Of course, I did learn from the best.
Shots department was a new thing for Monsters. We were really looking at a very interesting challenge when we started Monsters, and that was the challenge of simulation. Between Sullivan and Boo, Boo has a simulated shirt, Sullivan has simulated hair, we were looking at probably somewhere in the order of 900 to 1,000 shots that were going to have simulations. So we were really introducing a whole new step in the pipeline. It's the first time we've actually used simulation in production, and so we were concerned about some of the technical issues that might come up with simulation. So what we decided to do is that because it was something that was really going to have to be done all the time, we would restructure things a little bit. We needed some of the real, how shall I say, intellectual manpower that we have in an effects department to solve some of our more challenging simulation problems. But at the same time, we needed sort of the infrastructure of a department that's really used to dealing with every single shot of the film. And so what we did is we took rendering that had that infrastructure in it, and we took effects that had that brain power, and we mushed them all together, and we added some people and trained everybody on simulation and came up with the shots department. A great benefit of doing this was that we had an incredibly diverse set of skills within that department, and so we could tackle all kinds of problems. So things that we normally would have done through the standard modeling animation kind of pipeline, like the hazmats when they burst in and swing down on the ropes, or Sullivan when he's running through the hallway and he's got the blanket hanging off of his shoulders. It needed to look like a blanket. It needed to look like there was something underneath it, but you don't want to give away the punchline that Boo's actually under there. Little things, like things you wouldn't even think about, like tears. In particular, I think that the most fabulous use of the tears was with Sullivan when he says goodbye to Boo. You really get a sense that Sullivan is just, he's welling up, he's near crying, and that glassy, almost crying look on the eyes is really spectacular. So it was a lot of fun. We got all of the oddball challenges of the film got thrown into this department.
No. Kitty.
I'm Tom Porter, Supervising Technical Director on Monsters Incorporated.
Hi, my name is Steve May. I was a simulation and effects sequence supervisor.
Hi, I'm Michael Fong. I'm a sequence supervisor for Monsters Incorporated. So part of the character making process involves building stand-in models or test models. And in our case here, we have Johnson, the test model for eventually what would become Sullivan.
The art direction of this film was obviously diverging very far from the sort of suburban look of Toy Story and Toy Story 2. We had to define an entire monster world, and I thought it very important to be able to create 3D animation right off the bat to see whether the sort of direction we were going in with the pre-production art was what we wanted to do. So we put together this little conversation between Mike and Sullivan. Obviously, Mike here went through a phase where he had no arms. We wanted to see whether the animators could get an expressive character dealing only with his legs as the only appendage. I actually thought it was quite successful, but of course in the end we attached arms to Mike. There were a lot of issues on these early tests that we undertook. Here we're looking at Sullivan with tentacles. One of the obvious questions was whether you even wanted to commit to a main character walking with tentacles over the course of a 2-hour film. In the end, we rejected the idea, I think largely because the audience's eyes were commonly looking at the tentacles at a time when they should have been looking at Sullivan's face. Here is Sullivan close to his final form with the first hair test that convinced us we were definitely on the right track. This was a high point in the hair investigation.
So here we have another test version of Sullivan. This one is Mulligan.
We did a lot of animation tests to make sure that the fur held up in a variety of situations. We were really concerned about various actions and poses that the character could go through. The fur is a fairly complicated process. The hairs are moved by a computer program, and that means that each one of those hairs is somewhat out of our control. So we had to make sure that software worked really, really well. And the only way to do that was to run Sullivan through every kind of test we could think of until we kind of solved every little hitch and problem that could come up over the course of a film.
The directors had this idea at one point that Sullivan would wear glasses throughout the film. This is a dangerous sort of idea. Pixar animation in general is very careful to make sure that the eyes of the character are perfectly readable. The eyes turn out to be a very clear way of expressing the personality of any character. The decision to put glasses on Sullivan meant that perhaps the eyes wouldn't be as readable.
These are facial tests. We decided that his fur should be non-dynamic so that it didn't move in distracting ways in the area that we always focus on, which is the face of the character. For a while, Sullivan had a really thick coat of hair on his back. It was like a different color and a different thickness to the hair. It was an interesting test, but eventually we did away with that idea. One of the ways that we made development of the fur easier was we built a really simple model dubbed the hairball. And we started out with a kind of clean fur look, and then we tried some more extreme cases where we made the hair look like it was wet and slimy, or where it looked like it was made out of a kind of braided or corded hair. Eventually, Pete and Bob Polly grew attached to the hairball that we used for doing the fur tests, and we made some monsters with it. We added tentacles or legs, or in some cases arms, and generated a hair scare and some other background monsters for the movie. This shot really scared me to death. This is the kind of shot that, as an effects artist, it makes the sweat roll down your forehead. It makes your heart beat fast. These tests show the process that we took of the shot as it moved from animation, where the ground is just a kind of a flat plane and his body just intersects it. And then it shows how we simulated the fur to show the effect of the wind that would later also drive the snow that we would show in these shots. The snow is actually done in several layers. There's the really fine, powdery snow that kicks up when he hits it first. There was a level of chunky snow that made these kind of large pieces of snow that would fly out in front of him and actually impact on the ground. And then there was some very, very, very fine powdery snow that almost looked like a soft cloud. And this is in addition to the snow that's just going to be falling down from the sky. This is the final version of the shot. This has all the effects elements added together, and probably the most important element was the snow and the fur. In the end, we modified the way that the fur software worked, so we add things into his hair. As each hair is grown, we take into account a number of factors: how long he's been out in the snow, what direction the wind is blowing, etc., to determine the likelihood that snowflakes will occur on certain parts of his fur. And for that shot, in the end, we ended up with over 1 million individual snowflakes.
So once again, we've gone back to earlier tests of Sullivan. In this case here, we were testing how Sullivan's fur would react to, like, wind forces. The main thing we were focusing on here was the nozzle on the back spraying over his shoulder, and would it make the fur look like it was reacting to this burst of wind coming out?
We did several tests to just show the general motion of his fur. So we had Sullivan run, jog, walk, jump in place, scratch his chest. And the whole idea here was just to make sure that the fur looked like it had the weight of like a real animal's fur would have. We did a lot of tests for Sullivan. One way we tested his fur was to basically build an obstacle course and then run him through it. When we first ran this test, with the fur, it didn't go so well. His fur got caught in some of the objects that it was supposed to respond with. It stretched a lot because of the extreme amount of motion. We did another test, you see here. We got kind of a case of fur mange, where his skin is poking through. But in the end, we solved the problems with the fur with the help of our tools department. And we were able to actually run Sullivan through the obstacle course without any problems occurring.
This test was done in order to look at the relative size of Boo and Sullivan and to ask ourselves whether camera placement would be an issue when you've got an 8-foot-tall Sullivan dealing with such a small child. With this film, we knew we had one of the main characters, Boo, wearing a t-shirt throughout most of the film. And our feeling was that the sort of movement of the fabric had really nothing to do with personality or emotion. And what we wanted to do was to allow the animators to express cuteness, emotion, and personality while not worrying about the fabric. We built a simulator in order to drape the t-shirt on the Boo character. So Boo would get animated over in the animation department. They'd pass it along to the simulation department, which would drape the fabric. Even when the simulation is done, it turns out to be a very difficult problem to figure out what 100% cotton looks like. There's a huge difference between how burlap reacts and how silk reacts, as an example. And we did a number of animations in order to see what this cotton t-shirt should look like. We hired a tailor from San Francisco to come in a few times. He would look at them, say, oh, you've got a little bulging under the arm, you need to take it in a little bit. We would do as he suggested, rerun the animation, invite him back a week later, and sure enough, the animations looked a lot better. The t-shirt fit a lot better. By the end of production, that simulator worked wonderfully.
Such as myself say? Megan? Well, an that Zubblewump sure sounds Zubblewumptuous?
Yes. Now, the night before the egg hatches,
it has to soak up plenty of moonlight. So that's why I put the cage here on the windowsill. Horton, make sure to keep away any curious squirrels or birds.
Oh, don't worry. I'll do what I promise, and promise I do. To scare off bird, rodent, or stray kangaroo.
Now nothing will quiver or shiver or shake it?
This egg's like my promise. Nothing will break it.
I'll just sit on it.
No. I thought maybe you wanted me to help hatch it. I've had some experience with that, you know.
No. Just stand nearby, will you?
Or crude, or uncivil, or nasty, or least of all rude. So I'm politely and nicely requesting that you get off of my trunk, or I'll have Sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Grinch, but I believe you have an egg that does not belong to you. Oh, that's not it. Let me see. Now, see here, Grinch, give me that egg. No more forceful like this.
Okay, Grinchy, jigs up.
That's not bad. Megan, what are you doing here?
Well, it takes two to handle the Grinch.
Megan, that Grinch is a scary character.
I don't care.
His mind's all mixed up and blistered and bent.
I don't care.
His heart's made of hurt and his soul is cement.
I don't care.
He's mean, as I say.
And I say what I mean. I'll get my egg from that rotten green bean.
Well, wait for me. Pardon me.
Right load coming through.
What do you suppose?
Unless my eyes are deceiving and my ears are all waxy, he's either a moose or a new kind of taxi. Come on, you guys. You don't want to miss it. Right this way. Single file. Hey, short one's in front.
Excuse me?
Well, you'll have to wait your turn. And you, big fella, you'll have to stand at the back.
What's going on? Oh, Fidwick is taking us to see the coughing volcano.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Tidwick, we never know the volcano was coughing.
Yeah, it only coughs when it catches a cold.
What are the odds of that?
Well, don't just stand there. Come to the clearing.
Let's go.
I'm tired of living and scared of dying, but old man River, he just keeps rolling on.
Moose among moose.
Thank you, Fidwick.
See, this looked okay with my 2 eyes gazing, but with 4 eyes upon it, it's twice as amazing. And with 6 or with 8 or 210, the pleasure is doubled again and again.
And again.
And then some.
Amen.
Thanks, Fidwick.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
You know, I'd offer you a ride to wherever you're going, but I promised a family of yaks I'd help them cross a blistering hot desert. I tend to get overextended.
Well, it's a shame you can't come with us. We're going to get the Grinch.
The Grinch?
The Grinch.
The Grinch? The Grinch? Yes, the. As in Grinch. But nobody's ever, no one would dare.
Well, I would.
Well, I'm startled, I dare to declare. You don't know Megan. She's a brave little maid.
And that Grinch guy has stolen my Zubblewump egg.
The Zubblewump from the Zebulus Valley?
That's right.
Then you must be Megan Mullally.
That's me.
Is it true what I've heard from some moose dignitaries, that the Zubble egg's filled with moose moss and mooseberries? Moose moss and mooseberries? I'd probably doubt it. Seems that everyone's heard some strange story about it. Well, good luck. I'd love to see the Zubblewump one day, or at least give it a ride. Yaks! All yaks! Come aboard your caboose! That sure is one highly unusual moose. Uh-oh. If I could just get myself through this here thing. Oh, let me try this. Oh, I know. Perhaps if I go on a very fast diet.
That's not fast enough. Guess I'll have to try it.
Meg, wait! Megan! Oh, I like a good rhyme, you know that I do. But right now I'm feeling a little tense, so excuse me while I just hum nervously to myself.
I'm here to get my egg back. Oh, dear.
What to do with this unwelcome guest? What kind of amusement would suit her the best?
Actually, seeing my egg hatch would be nice.
It's my egg. My very own Grumpalump egg.
That's Zubblewump, and it's mine!
Mine!
You saw me crying in the chapel. The tears I shed were tears of joy. I know the meaning of content.
Leave it to me! Leave it to me! By the good name Mullally! Oh! Hurry! Yeah! I'll save you, Megan! Leave it to me! By the good name Mullally, I'm setting you free!
Don't worry. The Grinch is tangled and flinching. He was caught in the claws of his own Grinchy Grinching.
Oh, are you all right?
Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry for me. But the Zubble's another story, you see. By the good name Mullally, I'm setting it free.
Oh, that's very nice. What?
Oh, don't trouble yourself. I'll let myself out.
You're fired!
You saw me crying in the chapel. The tears I shed
A Zubblewump's lovely with just 2 ears hearing it, but more ears give more of a reason for cheering it. 60 or 80?
It's my Grumblum Pants. Me, 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 me. And me, me means me. It doesn't mean you or anyone else. No matter who.